Channel Factory is a global partner of ours, and they have some deep roots when it comes to the concepts of DE&I, conscious advertising, and a different part of the conversation when it comes to media and how we should behave and how the experiences should be online. But I'm not going to explain it. I'm going to introduce the Chief Strategy Officer, Phil Caudill, who yesterday also joined us on camera. And Phil, please come join me on the stage and explain a little bit about this conversation. Yes. Yes. And of course, Phil is going to introduce Kriti Jetli, who's also going to join him on the stage, but I'll introduce her. Come on up. I've met her, so thank you so much. Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kriti.
And we want to talk to you about the evolution of brand safety, because we think it's sort of bigger and broader, but we want to frame it in this issue of social media and how do we move from harmful to helpful.
We'd also share with you how being conscious can help accelerate media performance, plus drive inclusion, representation, and sustainability.
But frankly, one thing, if I'm allowed to be slightly cheeky, is that I don't want to be up here talking at you, so we're going to come down and join you. Is that all right? Because we're doing this together. We're all in this thing together. Rob talked about creating a community. So the way we create a community is by doing this together and creating a movement and a commitment to act. If we just talk about it, we do nothing. If we get together and hold hands, we make a difference. So what we're going to do is do this thing together as a team. And it's interesting, when we think about social media, there's all the helpful stuff. It's created platforms for people to communicate. It's created entrepreneurship. It's created environment. It's created creativity. By the way, hands up, anyone who's wearing odd socks other than Rob today. So we have the odd socks on. I just want to explain the significance. I have a third sock here. Anyone know why I've got a third sock? Okay, so today is Down Syndrome Global Awareness Day. And if you have Down syndrome, it means you actually have 3 21 chromosomes, not 2. And the shape of the chromosome is actually the shape of a sock. And so the reason they're encouraging everyone around the world to think about their socks and mismatched socks is it brings awareness to a really important issue. So I would encourage everyone, as an example of how does social media do good stuff, it helps tell stories like these. But unfortunately, in addition to the good stuff, there's some not so good stuff. So, Kriti, let's talk about the not so good.
And when we look at the not so good stuff, you can see a bunch of words on the other hand of this slide, but we can actually categorize them into 3 buckets. If you look at the first bucket here, you have exclusion, overblocking, stuff that's all pertinent to brand safety, and that's something that we'll be talking about during our session today. But as you look into some of the other stuff in this next bucket, that's where all election-related stuff comes about. So when you talk about misinformation, fake content, things that are deeply embedded in our online world today. And then that bleeds into all the social harassment, the bullying, the mental distress, which is a whole other topic. And I know Rob's already planning a separate conference on that, so stay tuned.
And the youth, the protecting our youth that we plugged earlier on in that session, that's part of that, super important. So as we get beyond brand safety, think about these other dimensions. Mis and disinformation, big time. Protecting our youth, absolutely. So Rob will be following up on those. Let's make sure that we can all participate and support. But as we think about the first one today, what's interesting, I put a few words up here and you're going, yep, 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 those are all good words. And because my language is somewhat limited, there's a few other words up there that many of you in the room will recognize. And you're going, okay, well, why is Kriti showing us these words? What do they all have in common? And that's really the question now. So, Kriti?
We commonly see all these words on exclusion lists.
Why do we have some of those words? COVID-19, pandemic, LGBT, marriage equality, global warming, climate change. Seriously? Still on exclusion lists? Shouldn't we have got beyond that? You know, Tawana, you're giving us a nod here. It's like, it's crazy, isn't it? It makes no sense. So the first thing to know where we're going to go is let's just frame how we got here. So I just want to sort of give a quick recap of the journey and show you what the next step is that we can do together. And the first one is, those of us who are old enough remember the time of chaos. We won't ask us to put our hands up, but we know who we are. Do you remember those early days? Video everywhere, ads everywhere. It was fabulous, but it was chaotic, and you just did not want to have bad stuff happen to your brand. So while you had ads everywhere,
for the advertiser, that meant a lot of non-viewable ads, a whole bunch of fraud, limited ad experiences. Let's not even get started on the PII and the data risks.
Oh, deprecation of cookies? Don't go there. No, we're not going to go there.
Let's not get there, but most importantly, there was a lot of misaligned content.
So this all sort of led to the industry thinking, okay, how do we solve it? So the industry responds to this chaos with what we call cautious. heightened controls, policies, standards, all that good stuff that we've been building together and we've all been part of. But actually, what does that do for the advertiser?
There was an era of checks and balances, so we had all the viewability standards that started to come about. The brand safety as a discipline started to emerge. You had keyword lists, exclusion bans, you had industry bodies such as WFA, GARM, and the 4As. But most importantly, the brand safety summits. So here we are today.
So if it wasn't for this period of caution, we all wouldn't be here in the room, and we wouldn't have Rob hosting us here and building this community of brand safety experts around the world. But unfortunately, in this time of caution, there were some unintended consequences. And I just want to dimensionalize these. We ended up block lists that overblock. We ended up with inclusion lists that weren't inclusive. We had voices not heard and faces not seen. And we had defunding of responsible journalism. So these were unintended consequences for well-intentioned efforts, but they have to be remedied. So what we want to do is talk to you about how we get from this into the evolution, which is this challenge of we've got to combine brand safety with being effective and responsible. And really, Benjamin was a perfect setup. So Ben, thank you for that setup, because it really is, how do you do performance, but also do it with broader focus and responsibility? So what does that lead us to?
So that basically means we're in an era of exclusion right now. And how do we move from here to an era of inclusion? So from blunt exclusion to intentional inclusion.
And really, this is this journey that I think we all want to choose to sign up to. And what I want to share with you, if we've had chaos, we went to cautious, the key to this is conscious. If we're conscious of all of the aspects of a piece of content, we're also conscious of our own processing and our subconscious bias. What we'll start to do is be able to think about content in a much more refined way, where we can avoid the negative and we can amplify the positive. And this gets to Kriti's point about being intentionally inclusive, really is broadly exclusive.
So today we're going to share some tips and tricks with you on first, how do we be a conscious business? Second, what are the 4 phases of consciousness? Some real-world opportunities as the third, and then the road ahead.
So being a conscious business is just the obvious bit at the beginning of going, hands up who doesn't want to do good business and do good for people and planet. Gladly, nobody in the room is going to say that. So hands up, everyone actually wants to do good business and be responsible and be good for people and planet. Can I get a hell yes, please, on that? I think we need some hands up. Come on, we all want to do it. Come on, come on. This is part of what we do here. So being a conscious business means we avoid the issue of going, we do profit, or we got some charities that do good. No, you can do both. It's not an either-or choice. It really is an opportunity that you bring both together. And what we call this is doing good business while doing good. Wouldn't we all sign up to do good business while doing good? Something that our parents, our kids will be proud of? That's our opportunity as an industry. So as we do good business doing good, we go, well, how? And you go, well, conscious. Conscious is the North Star that helps us get there.
So that we are all on the same page, let's start with the definition of what conscious means. So conscious per the dictionary means being fully aware of both ourselves and what exists around us. So once we know that there's an issue, we have two choices to make. Actually, one choice to make. Either you do something about it or you do nothing at all.
Yeah, you think about it. We're in this room and we can choose to now be aware and say, not my problem, or we can choose to do something. So being conscious means that we're compelled to take a stand. We've got to shine a light. We've got to start a journey. The idea of burying our heads and saying somebody else's problem, not acceptable. And we've really got to think how we dimensionalize and understand this journey. And that leads us really, I want to share with you the 4 phases of consciousness. So you can think about, okay, where am I today? What do I have to work through? And how do I make a difference that I, my family, my community will truly be proud of? And the first phase is easy. We're currently unconsciously unconscious. We don't even know we're creating fault and harm. It's just sort of happening. And it's this coincidental effect. So unconsciously unconscious is that start point. Hopefully not many people in this room are there, but many of our colleagues, clients, and friends in the industry may still be there.
So if we put this into a brand safety context, as advertisers, what are your exclusion keywords? How many of us are even like keeping a tab on these?
I would ask, if I can be a little cheeky, who's looked at their brand safety words and their exclusion word list, like in the last, say, month? Last 3 months? Any hands? We got a few? Okay. We have to look at these things, don't we? And it's like, it's part of our responsibility. You've got to have a look and see. And that leads us to the second point, which is we're now consciously unconscious. We're now aware there's an issue, but we haven't remedied it yet. So when you looked at your list, I'm going to come over and talk to you over here if I may. Hello. Hi, I'm Phil. Who are you?
Kristen.
Hey, Kristen. Oh, Kristen from OMD. Thank you. I hope you don't. We've never met before, but I'm just going to pick on you for a moment. So when you were looking at your list, were there words that you felt uncomfortable with, or did you feel you felt comfortable with where it was?
As in, like, with the exclusion list of
Yeah,
words,
yeah.
a lot of uncomfortable words.
A lot of uncomfortable words. I think that issue, thank you for being so brave and sharing. You know, which keywords are causing concern? I think that question for all of us is where it comes in. When we feel uncomfortable, do something, do nothing is our choice. So, Kriti, back over to you.
I think you've set the question out, Phil. Let's have a look at what's causing concern to us amongst these keywords. I mean, personally, if I look at these keywords as a mother of a 6-year-old, I deeply care about the planet. And when I look at words such as global warming, climate change coming up, I really struggle to understand as to why they're even there as exclusion keywords on some of these lists.
And don't get me started on COVID-19, pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, seriously? But some of these get there by accident, some they get by intent, and some get by well-intentioned efforts. So what we'd say is really, how do we get to this third stage, which is being, let's be consciously conscious of there's some bad stuff there, but we now know we can fix it. The first thing about, I'm an alcoholic. Until I know I'm an alcoholic, I'm never going to go to AA. I have to realize I have a problem, and then I can choose to solve, which is where we get to the third phase.
Which means in a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month from now, how many of us are actually going to go back and look at these keywords?
By the way, if we go back to how many hands were raised, hopefully all the hands are raised, yeah? Because it's like, that's the first step, have a look. And then you go, well, which ones, like we were saying, cause us a little bit of concern?
Absolutely. So let's have a look at those keywords, guys.
And then that leads us to the fourth stage, because just fixing something that's wrong isn't enough. Wouldn't it be great if we could be unconsciously conscious, which basically means just spontaneity, means without thinking about it, we just do the right thing. Instead of having to work through this bad stuff when we fix it, let's just start with creating stuff that doesn't cause harm in the first place. And I think we can get a yes, please for that, can't we? We get a yes, please.
Of course.
Thank you so much. So as we move to this fourth phase, let's think about how do we evolve.
Yep. And let's start with exploring, ideating, and then adopting methods that free us from these inherent biases that we bring to the table. Instead of starting from a place of fixing something, let's be at a place where we're starting from good itself.
And remember again, I think something that Amrita said at the outset, the broad definitions, the things included in keyword lists, it is so crazy broad. We're not just talking about race or ethnicity and sustainability, but civic society, responsible journalism, women's rights, reproductive rights. The list is huge. To each of you, the list will be slightly different, but to all of our brands, to our consumers and our audiences, they all resonate and they're significant, especially when we think about younger audiences. So how do we adopt as an industry a way of creating good from the outset versus having to remedy a little bit of harm? So that then leads us really to this quote I'd like to share from Luis. Now, Luis was actually at the Brand Safety Summit in New York in December, and he was asked by Rob Rakowitz of GARM. He said, what's your ask of the industry? And I'd convey his ask to all of you. And Luis put it beautifully. He said, my number one ask, please check your inclusion and exclusion lists. Don't just avoid the bad, raise those that need more investment, including D&I creators and good journalism. If we do that, we'll create a more trusted, valid media landscape. And I think this is something we'd all want to sign up to. So thank you to Luis for saying that. Thank you for Rob to create a forum where people like Luis can say this. And more importantly, thank you for rolling this onto here so we can all share and learn from it. So as we share and learn, we go, well, okay, so what do I do in the real world?
Which means tomorrow when we all go back to work, are we all going to apply all the theory that we just spoke about? Maybe not. So maybe this next section talks about the real world implications and opportunities as to how do we use this theory to make better media decisions and media plans.
And do you remember when we talked about bronze and silver and gold? And we all know that Amrita's competitive. Like yesterday, she said, I want 99% market share. I'm like, only 99? That was modest for her. She wanted to be at gold. Gold, to me, is when we get to the level that we don't just think about safety or suitability in isolated buckets. We talk about performance, campaign performance. And wouldn't it be lovely if I could just avoid the bad stuff and align with the good stuff? Wouldn't that be great? Job done, easy peasy. What I want to do is when I think about constraining the harmful, I just want to avoid anything that's unsafe, unsuitable, untrue. And I want to lean into anything that's contextually relevant, responsive, and inclusive. Duh. But couldn't I do all those 6 things in one place, on one platform, with one data set for one amount of money? That would be lovely. This is really the evolution that taking, in my mind, safety and suitability out from being a tactic to being part of strategic planning and communicating how do we best engage our brands with our audiences for maximum effect. But that's not all. It's like Steve Jobs. And there's one more thing. And here we're saying you can do all of this, but what you can actually do is create greater environmental inclusion, responsibility, and societal impact. So, why am I showing you a picture of somebody with chocolate on his face? I love chocolate. I have to go running every night because I love chocolate too much. It's a terrible curse, but I'm a victim of it. I love chocolate. Think about chocolate brands, and we've talked about Mars, we've talked about a few of the other big confectionery brands. Chocolate's fabulous, and chocolate advertisers want to drive effective advertising return, don't they? Yeah, of course they do. They need good ROI. They also actually need somewhere to grow their cocoa beans. So think about it for a moment. If they just focus on ROI, but in doing ROI, they actually damage the planet, there ain't going to be anywhere to grow the cocoa beans, in which case there's going to be no cocoa to make any chocolate, which means we're not going to have campaigns to sell chocolate because there's nowhere to grow the cocoa beans. So if we think about it much more holistically, we have to think about the role of people and planet all the way through to performance and advertising, and we've got to connect the two. And to me, chocolate does it perfectly. And Kriti, I know you're not allowed to say who it is, but you can share a case study.
Yes, without disclosing any names, here's a global chocolate brand and an example from the region itself.
And really tasty.
Absolutely.
You can bribe me with chocolate later, and you may be able to force it out of me.
We don't want you going running, Phil, so
Oh.
not at all. All right, so the first objective that we had out here with this particular brand was, as in most cases, driving superior advertising performance. Now, by applying the 6 principles that Phil just spoke about, we were able to not just lower the media wastage in this instance, but also drive superior outcomes for the brand, as you can see on the left-hand side. Now, that's not all. Coincidentally, while doing better targeting and reducing wastage, we were actually able to drive a much more sustainable campaign. So 62% higher sustainability by making sure we were reducing the media wastage and increasing the targeting to the right audience at the right context with the right content. So it's a win-win for everybody.
So you do proper planning, you get performance, and you get planet, and you get people. And taking that thought, it's really this essence of doing good business while doing good. Mark Pritchard put it super well. He was very honest, and he said that at P&G, they'd been excluding audiences for issues not just of D&I, but for their point of view on sustainability, on women's rights, on reproductive rights, etc. There'd been a broad amount of exclusion. And what they'd realized that actually when they took those exclusions off, there were more people to buy their stuff. So they actually reintroduced those audiences. They stopped blocking them, and they credit half of all of their brand growth from coming from previously excluded audiences. In a mature market with mature brands, half of brand growth, that is a massive impact in a business decision. So this isn't just about doing what we feel is right and responsible. This is doing stuff that actually is good for business. So back to the point I said at the outset, we can do good business while doing good. So Kriti, take us to the road ahead.
Which brings us to the road ahead. And in our opinion, we really believe this is not just like a destination, it's a journey. So in order to embark this journey, we need to ask ourselves 3 questions. Where are we today? How important is safety? Is it even on our agenda? Are we talking about safety and suitability beyond the vanilla, as Amrita was talking about? Where do we want to go from here? Do we even want to do something about it? Is it a strategic approach, or is it just a tick on the box or a tactical approach that we're looking at? And last but most importantly, who's going to be joining this journey with us? Are we really there to commit ourselves to it, or we're taking the other way around?
I had the pleasure of being over with the Meta folks the other day, and we're walking down where I was being escorted to the gents' toilets, but we're not going to explain that story, are we? No, we're not going to talk about you loitering outside the gents' toilets. No? But as we did walk down the corridor to the gents' toilets, she was showing me the art on the wall, and one of the art pieces on the wall said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with friends. And I think that's really pertinent to this, that, all of us can have an ambition, but if we work on our own, we can only do so much. If we choose friends together on a common mission and purpose, we can make a bigger impact. So if we want to go far, let's go together and let's go with friends. So any of you come across Danny Seo? Read any of Danny Seo's books? Okay, the reason I'm sharing with you, Danny, is the last thought here is that this is really big, heavy stuff. And it's too big, I can't do it. And so I choose not to do anything. Or I choose to start. The DOT theory, DOT stands for do one thing. DAT stands for do another thing. Or if me as one miserable, inferior person can do one tiny little thing, my mum would point out how inadequate I am. So I do one little thing. What's interesting, if you do one thing, and then you do one thing, and then you do one thing, and you do one thing, and you do one thing, then together what we started to do is all these little individual dots join together and form a pattern and drive momentum and change. So the DOT theory is don't be scared off by how big some of this stuff is. Just do one thing. And once you've done one thing, it's easy to do another thing. And then actually all of our one things add up to make a bigger difference. So we can just say, okay, we can truly make a difference and evolve. So Danny and other authors, the Just Do One Thing is a lovely way of giving us permission just to try and to start and to move ahead. So that's our commitment to the journey.
So let's commit. Let's join these dots. Let's be a conscious business. Let's walk through the 4 phases of consciousness ourselves. Let's go back and look at those keyword lists and make sure we're looking at it from a strategic point of view. Let's create real-world opportunities and let's commit to this road ahead.
It's a choice. We can hide or we can stand up and make a difference. I don't know about you, but every day when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we make a choice. Every time our kids look at us, we choose to see how they regard us. Every time our parents ask us what we do for a job, there's a choice to explain what we do. And I think we have the opportunity in industry to join all of our dots, join all our efforts. This is not competitive, this is collaborative, it's a team sport. Together, we can address this issue, we can resolve this issue, we can make a fundamental change to media wellness, and we can be a force for good as well as a force for profit. Together we can do it, and together we can be conscious. So with that, thank you very much indeed for your time and your attention.